Okay, we're going to be talking about the SpaceX IPO. Today was the first day of trading. Today's trading is over, so we're going to go over that. We're going to be talking about the rule changes, specifically the one about the lockup period. So we're going to talk about how that changed and what typically happens. So today we completed day one of the public trade of SpaceX. So the IPO was set at $135 a share. However, when it was available to the public, it was $150 a share. So this is an 11% increase from the actual IPO price. And I did do a video on the chain of investors from early investors to retail investors. Right now, when it went public, this is where the retail investors get in. So if you're one of the retail investors buying on day one, you're actually last in line. You're not early. You're not one of the early investors. So just wanted to clarify that. So the intraday trading, we went as high as $176. That's about 30% above the initial IPO. It's pretty good. And today we closed at $160.95. So that is 19% above the IPO. Typically they're 18 to 20%, so that is right in line with where IPOs tend to end up on the first day. Not always, of course. They do all kinds of things, but typically that's pretty decent. Okay, so let's talk about the rule changes regarding this lockup. First of all, what a lockup period is, if you don't know, this is the period, or this is the time where the early investors cannot sell their shares on the public market. Typically, this is 90 to 180 days. So 90 days on the fast end, so 3 months. So after the stock goes public, the insiders cannot sell their shares for 90 days or 180, 6 months, if that was how it was written. This is pretty typical. What they're saying is that SpaceX got the rules changed so that the lockup period ends in 2 days. I'm just going to say, that's not true. This is not how that works. What has actually changed is they didn't go to a 180-day cliff where everybody can sell 100% of their shares if they want. That's typically how it's set up. What they tried to do to control the volatility is they tiered it. So at 2 days, the early investors, if they qualify, are allowed to sell up to 20% of what they already hold. So that's the 2-day lockup, but nobody else, not everybody gets this. So let me explain the 2-day unlock. The 2-day unlock is not the second day of public trading. It's 2 days after the first earnings report. So from now until 2 days after the very first public earnings report from SpaceX, we're still in a lockup period. Nobody can sell their shares. At that time, there's a small group of people that are eligible to sell 20% of their holdings. There's also a performance base, so if the shares on the open market are trading 30% above the IPO, these people can sell an additional 10%, bringing their eligibility of 30%. And this 30% is of the shares they own, not the company. I should also mark that this is in addition to that 3-4% float that the company initially released at the IPO. These are more shares. So as this lockup period tapers off, more shares will release onto the market, increasing the total float. So the next steps in the tiers are day 70, 90, 105, 120, and 135. At each of these steps, the people who qualify for those steps can release 7% of their shares. Not more. It's not the total company. It's only their portion that they personally own. The next step is on the second earnings report. So when SpaceX releases the second earnings report, that makes another 28% of those insider shares eligible for sale. So the next step is the 180-day mark. This is where typically most companies get to release them all. So far we've tiered up to this point, and now at this point, the rest of the shares, with the exception of the final step, they're all eligible for sale. Now, this will increase the company's float. We don't know by how much, because we don't know how many will be sold. That's not public information, at least not at this point. And the final release of the lockup period is day 366. This is when Elon Musk himself and other major investors get to sell their shares. So when we talk about the release or how the rules are different, they are different. Typically in a stock, in an IPO offering, that lockup period goes 180 days and then it's open. And this is why they call that the cliff, right? So all the insiders get to dump their shares and cash in. But in this case, the rules were changed to kind of modify that cliff. It's tiered, so a little bit gets released here, a little bit more, then a little bit more, and a little bit more. And then Elon, the major investors, they have to wait over a year before they're able to release it all. This is the difference in the lockup. And it's unfortunate that people are reporting this as a big rule change for SpaceX and Elon Musk. So I think when you're looking at these things, you have to be careful not to look at it with a political bias. A lot of people are negative against Elon right now because of their political issues, and I think that's unfortunate. I think when it comes to investing and trading, you need to put the political biases aside and just kind of look at it for what it is. I like to look at just what's actually going on. So when we're talking about the rules changing in favor of Elon, I don't think they're really changing in favor of Elon. And I don't think they're changing as much as people make it out to be. It's not a 2-day, now the lockup period's over. As you can see, it's a tiered system. That's a little bit different than typical. Typically at day 180, that's when everybody can sell. Here, it's tiered out to reduce the volatility. Another thing that changed is Elon and major investors have to hold for 366 days. That's over a year. That's not typical either. Typically, all investors, the early investors, can dump on day 180. So I don't think that the lockup rules changed in favor of Elon and SpaceX. I think they just changed to help reduce the volatility. Well, hopefully you have a better understanding of the lockup period and the tier structure that was set in place for this IPO and how it differs from the typical IPO. I really tried to create a simple, easy to understand yet informative video on this lockdown period. I hope you found this helpful. If so, leave in the comments below if there was something you got out of this video, and share it with a friend who you think would benefit from this. Until next time.